Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today we have a lovely and dear friend from Louisville, Kentucky, um, on with us today. This is Blaire. She was first my esthetician and then laying in her, I don't know what they're called, bed thing one day. We decided we had to actually be real friends too. And so here we are all these years later. She's an incredible gifted esthetician. If you are in the area, you should go see her. But if not, just a great human who has some really wonderful and interesting thoughts and insights she's going to share with us today around this topic of spirituality. So this month we're really focusing on like embracing the summer glow. What are some of these like curious places we can go that not necessarily we have to fix or change, but that we just want to maybe tap into, explore more, deepen. And she was the first person that came to mind when I thought about this topic. So welcome, Blaire. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you. What a great intro.
Um, so let's just get into it. What comes to mind when you hear the word spirituality, and like what does that look like sort of for you and in your life?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like we hinted on in our discussion before this, it's an incredibly complex topic. So for me, I have to kind of like have my bullet points and break it down and be quiet with myself about it to where it doesn't become this daunting thing.
Yeah.
But spirituality to me is kind of a much more abstract and often attainable and individualized way of expressing your beliefs. And I think your beliefs in yourself and the world around you, what you need to kind of decompress and what you need to recenter. Those are the main qualities, and I think it does so without the construct of religion, which I think is very liberating for certain personality types.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it's just that finding that quiet space in the brain that allows you to really take control of what's next. So to I have kind of things to me that I think tap into spirituality easiest for me in kind of a bullet point form. And it took me a really long time to actually care enough about myself to deconstruct this.
Mhm.
But the number one thing for me in kind of starting to tap into spirituality and whatever, if you associate that with a soul or a space in the body that isn't definable.
Mhm.
But I think preservation, and that word's going to probably come up a few times in this conversation, but I think preservation is one of the fundamental kind of stepping stones in building your spirituality. And what I mean by that is preserving yourself from the things that take away from a moment of stillness.
Mhm.
And in a world that is completely addicted to social media, which same.
Yeah.
I think limiting social media is in one of my number one disciplines in creating more time for my own spirituality and development. Um, you know, my relationship with social media is an incredible thing as well. It's allowed me to build my business. It's allowed me to stay aware of my clients and their lives, and it's really been such a beautiful development in my career. And for that, I will always kind of continue to be a part of it and respect it. It's also incredible for community building, for finding interests, common interests, and not feeling isolated to your own whatever it is, paralyzations or whatever you feel doesn't exist might actually be there. And I think it's a great exposure to those things, those subsects that you need to really grow.
Yeah.
So those things are great, but I think allowing yourself to scroll mindlessly or to kind of get enraptured in comparison can be the real thief of joy, which I think is one of the number one demotivators to tap into spirituality. So that's the first overarching thing that I think you kind of just have to make the decision of, is spirituality important to me? Is it something I'm missing? And how do I get to the time that it takes to actually tap in? So that's the number one bullet point as far as the entry point into prioritizing yourself.
I think that's such a great summation and way to think about it. I know we talk a lot about mind, we talk a lot about body, and I think that how you phrased it, where you can have spirituality without even being in the constraints of religion. I think sometimes people are like, well, I'm not religious, so I'm not spiritual, or I'm only this or I'm only that. I think it's like all things, a lot more fluid, right? And I love this idea of thinking of it as like that quiet space, or that undefined space, right? Like I physically know what my body is. I can like think about my brain and mind in this like literal way. But there is that other part of us that, whether we, like your intuition, your gut, your sixth sense, your inner knowing, your energy, like whatever words we want to put with it, there is another layer to us on some level, whether you go on the earth and never, you're dead, or you go somewhere else or whatever, that part, like irrelevant. But like, I think while we're living here in this moment, in this conversation, like there is another layer. And I think it's the one that's least spoken about, or even if you grew up in a religious community, I think sometimes you still don't think about spirituality in the spirituality sense, right? Like it's still it's more just religion or whatever else. So the one I think is the left out the most, no matter kind of like where you fall on that spectrum. I think we have a harder time making space for it, thinking about it, or attuning to it, because it is so intangible.
That's right. It's very
on the surface level, right? I'm sure there are ways you can connect very tangibly to it, but it feels like a little more murky or a little harder to figure out where or how to even conceptualize it.
Absolutely. And I think in such a busy world, it is so much of it is creating time to think about it. Because if you think about the difference between spirituality and religion, it is the difference between abstraction and a construct.
Right.
So when you have a religion, it's a doctrine that's been created around the expression of spirituality and the fulfillment of that. And you're going to a meeting place, once a week. And
there's a space, there's a text,
right.
There's rules,
that's right.
Rooted in the here and now in a way.
And for some people, that's what they need, and that's that final expression to them. But then there is, to me, a much deeper part to try to find and discover, and that is without that construct, which is really uprooting for some people, and can feel really floaty and feel really like in terms of just this genre of BS, which I think is something that we have to kind of fight in ourselves to not have such a cynical notion around spirituality, for sure.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you personally like connect to it, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So I am such a sound creature. So, and I noticed that in my 4-year-old to my daughter, Nova. I mean, there is so much power in sound. And so I have the luxury, and not everyone does, but I do have the luxury of controlling a lot of my intake in the career that I have, because I have a space that people come to decompress.
Yep.
There's times where conversation takes over, or it might take a different turn or be more education based. But for the most part, I get to put on my YouTube videos of binaural beats or positive female energy YouTube videos that have just an endless opportunity for you to have that very auditory experience that I think scientifically can be proven to show an opening and a receptivity to really tapping into something that feels more profound.
Yeah.
And so I get to find those moments throughout my day in a dark room that isn't full of sensory and isn't full of distraction, and that I get to actually express myself also, which is human touch. Like the spirituality that comes with that is really, I'm so grateful to have that exchange. But what also comes with that again is preserving my own energy in that space as well. So I think that sound therapy, getting into the sounds that people have studied for thousands of years, even since, monkhood, monasteries are incredible for that.
Yeah.
Is giving the brain that opportunity to say, this is the one thing that I'm going to allow my brain to experience, allow my body to experience. So that is a great entry point into, I think, into something other than like guided meditation. Because I think when you jump into that, it can feel a little phony, it can feel funny. Yeah. You may not be ready to experience that through something that feels already so constructed. Mm-hmm. So I find those things, everybody has access for the most part to YouTube and to other platforms that are going to provide that type of meditative music and sound, and just to kind of see what your body does with that. I mean, it's amazing just when you kind of let yourself be in those moments or in a new experience, how much you really can learn from that. So sound therapy is huge for me to find my spirituality. And that could be for music, that could be in music as well for many. Mm-hmm. However, music with lyrics can, for me, can still be busy.
I was going to say, it's like we're watering it down so much to this base level, but a very important level, but really like taking out the extra. There's nothing wrong with that, can be a place that you can transcend, whatever. But yes, sound baths I'm thinking of, like
they're wonderful.
The music you put on at night to like literally turn your brain down. Katie was on a few months ago. I don't remember the name of the therapy, but it's a new therapy that literally you just wear headphones and it's like these music and these sounds, and it helps reset for like trauma and nervous system. Like what we are learning on this very like evidence-based level and just an intuitive level that people have been doing forever, like you said, how important just frequencies, right? We all have that bug of noise level. Like there are noises I'm like, like, that, if we're that sensitive to a negative one, how receptive can we be to this more positive, like, feeding, again, this part of us that we can't see per se, but those vibrations, those like cellular, or I'm thinking of Louisville that has the rum, is it rum gin? The distillery where they play music. And the sound waves literally go in and distill it's not whiskey, but whatever the one it is. But it's so cool that like more Metallica, this bottle tastes different than more Snoop Dogg, right? Like, but it just shows how powerful like those energies are in this outward example of helping the distilling process for a liquor. Like,
that's cool. No, that's so cool. I wasn't aware they were doing that, but that's great news and information.
It's the one, I feel like we went to like dinner on the roof there. Maybe this was someone else. I don't know. I'll find the name. It's the one. It's like
it's the one. It's the rooftop.
They have like a rooftop bar and whatever, but then you go on like a tour. I think it's rum.
That's cool.
It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. You could go visit it.
That's really
cool. So, yeah,
that's so cool, and that's what I mean. Like I think we, these conversations are so important because it really helps kind of remind us or simplify the human experience we have with energy and what creates that, and so sound to me is one of the most primal and direct ways to try and help the brain enter different pathways of existing. And so and that's all part of it is the space. the space that you create. And sometimes we can't summon that on our own.
Right.
It's just not, we don't have just this unstoppable, brain, or you're always constantly thinking about what's next, and there's never that space. And so if a vibration, something as simple as a vibration, can help us stay right here, right now, what a gift. And I think those are things that people should be willing to explore.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the reasons, maybe for you personally or in general, that we are so avoidant of this part of ourselves, or this space?
Well, because it's not superficial. And I think that's very scary territory for people, and it, coming from so many vast realms of the individual experience. And I think that it can, when you start to really decompress, and you start to really allow the body to feel or not feel, or have some kind of extremity that you're not used to, I think it can be very daunting as to what you might discover.
Yeah.
It can also be something that that maybe just feels, again, it just maybe just feels like the real tangible fibers aren't there. That's scary for certain personalities. And I think that it's unknown territory. That's something that, when you're entering that, all your defenses go up.
Yeah.
And so it's so natural to fight any realm of spirituality, no matter what your life has been, or what you are afraid life may be, or whatever it is.
Right.
So I do think it stems in fear of the unknown.
And maybe also, I'm thinking, just a lack of understanding its importance, or making it a priority. I mean, look at how neglectful we can be of our bodies, which we physically see and live in and feel the impact every day. And even then we can be avoidant and make choices that just perpetuate that, versus something that feels so intangible, but is such a foundational part of us, but it's harder to like make the connection or see that there's the buy-in is not as easily there. Sure. I wonder too if that we are that out of touch with ourselves as full beings, right?
Absolutely.
Lots of reasons, but I think it's like a pandemic of it.
Lots of reasons, and those reasons could turn into its own in-depth conversation, just one by one.
Yes.
And so again, I do think the unknown is incredibly daunting. I think unresolved issues or trauma or whatever it is that deep waters surface, and also time being such a barrier, and people not able to prioritize themselves or their spirituality, like that just becomes like the last priority, right?
Right.
And survival is not always based in those things. And so I think it makes sense why there's so much resistance, and all we can do is keep encouraging each other to have that conversation, and to try and figure out what it is that's going to make you feel the most whole. My next bullet point being, here and now.
Yeah.
I mean, we hear that almost constantly when we get into, you start approaching more midlife, and you start really taking a step back and looking at your life and looking at what's important. And here and now comes up all the time from people in my world. And I think that's when that time prioritization and that diving into something unsafe or unknown, I think just doing it, in the now and just making it a priority is so, so important. That's why killing our unhealthy obsessions with social media and things that really just keep us constantly distracted and don't allow us to have good time management.
Right.
Those are the things that don't allow us to be present in our current needs. And so that's the other thing I think a lot, is that people are always kind of thinking about what's ahead, what vacation's ahead, what's the next meeting look like, what is, whatever it is. We are never capable of saying, my child right in front of me right now, that's the most important thing, or this song that just came on, or looking at my precious animal. Just taking more time to appreciate what's right there is such an underrated thing, and so hard, one of the most difficult. So that's part of my spirituality too. Growing my spirituality is saying, I did that today. I did that. I was there with my kid today. You know what I mean? Those are the things that really fulfill it for me with that philosophy.
I love that. Such a good reminder. I think you're right. Even in moments that you look like you're somewhere, I'm sure even with your job, like you have to still bring yourself to be there with that client doing that thing, and too listening to people all day. Like,
all too well.
Like, what am I gonna have for dinner? Well, oh no, wait, over here. Like, we're humans, it's normal, but it is that active energy of constantly checking in and choosing to come back and be present. And there are times when we don't need to be, or it doesn't serve us, or we need that little break. But I think sometimes we live in that space too much of a good thing, and it becomes destructive and maladaptive, versus how rich it can be to fully connect with the other energies and people in the room, the other experience, flowers, plants, air, the other things, noises, like really those five senses, when they're on and we can see and feel and hear and smell them, like we are being present, right? And it's a nice grounding, like quick tool to come back to it. But I do think that in a world where we're fueled by anxieties and worries and the next thing and the next thing, it's the first to go. It's so hard to stay focused. Someone just told me too, like the I'm not gonna remember the number, but it was something dumb, like 0.7 seconds is like our attention span these days for the average adult. Like it's something, so you think of like back in the day when you would just sit for hours in like a classroom and not move, and somehow people did that, and now like even grown-ass adults can't like focus for longer than like 0.2 seconds or something dumb. It's wild. But that's
yes, because that's where I hate to say it again, but that's where technology has played such a pertinent role in that. And the less you leave yourself vulnerable to whatever it is that we're experiencing in our human shift right now, the better. I mean, I just think that, having a goal to expand your attention it's a superpower. And obviously some people need more assistance than others in that way, just biologically. And that's great. There's a whole world out there for that. But I think as far as what you can control, you know what I mean? That having the goal of sitting longer with something allows you to really fully experience it. And that's where you have to be decisive in what is really worthy of that.
Yeah, because we don't necessarily have time or space for all of that in any
given time. No, we don't. And I'm not always the best. There's times where I'm like, I really lost track of myself the last couple of weeks. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. Where am I? And that's common. But I think there's also, I'm so grounded in meaning and in finding meaning that, and I think, and I can contribute that to being raised in a religious home, no matter how much I resented certain aspects of that growing up. It did. There was such a joyous need to express myself through, again, worship music, church music, all of those things.
Yeah.
It allowed me to get rooted in how wonderful it is to experience something within the body, but yet outside of it. It's such a cool relationship internally and externally. So I don't think I would have had that as much without religion, but I still think it's attainable to figure it out.
Mhm.
And if you're not comfortable there. So that's what this whole conversation is about, is just to encourage the beautiful life that it is to tap into something deeper, so that things don't feel so disposable and filthy. There's just times where life just feels filthy.
Yeah.
And so I think yeah, I feel nasty someday.
Yeah.
You're like, what are we doing? Like, what are we becoming?
Yeah.
And so I think it's definitely so important to really want something more, and it's okay to feel that.
Yeah. I
So
think, like you said, to give permission to look for that in whatever
yes.
medium speaks
Yep.
most to you, that there isn't just one way, and it might evolve and change over the years. I know for me personally what that word means to me and how I connect with it has definitely changed over the years as well. But you definitely came to mind as the person I want to talk about this, because I know just through our friendship, being with you, like for a dinner, whoever else, like we could be there for 5 hours. I wouldn't have known it. We're like, you're so good at being so present and then drawing others in to be present with you. And again, it's not a luxury we can do all the time, even if we live in the same space. Can't just be like gone for 5 hours all the time. But when we get to be together and do and have those conversations and spend time, it feels just so full. And I think that's a testament to how connected you are to yourself and to your space. And sometimes it's hard to get a hold of you, but when you can, it's a good thing, because you're very where you're
horrible.
at. And I love
I
that.
know.
So, I
I
think
am wherever I am. But it's so
yeah. And I think it's a good reminder of how there's a place for both, but it's such a goal space. So
that's such you've never said that to me in those words before, and that's such a beautiful compliment. And yes, there is such a give and take with that presence of mind, because other things get left out, or they get put on a priority list. And that's not to diminish anything. It's not in an order of importance. It's in an order of I will be with this person, and I've decided that this person is for me for life, which is what you are. But there are boundaries that I have around an immediate response. And I think in a world that demands so many responses, I think there's a pushback from me, and not in a mean way or an aggressive way. It's just to say,
you're like, I don't need to do that right now.
yeah, I'm not, and that's part of what we're talking about, is like, if there's not an urgency, or my other thing is, if I don't have the right answer, if I don't have the right, not the right answer, if I don't have the answer I've thought about, right? Then I need more time to get to that respectfully. And that's just kind of how my body works. But I do think, I mean, just like, I get the push to do that from my parents as well, which is so beautiful, because I went away to the lake this weekend and left my sweet girl at home with my parents, and they said, don't call me. You know what I mean? If there's anything going on, you're going to know,
We will let you know that.
We'll let you know. And I think there's value in that. And I feel like I wish we could have that from so many more dynamics in life, but we don't.
Yeah.
So to have it from them is such a gift, just so I could go, and I was right there with my friends, just enjoying my 2 days and looking at the beautiful surroundings that I got to be a part of. And feeling the wind in my hair. And it sounds so cheesy and it sounds so whatever. But I think that really is what it is it's just the liberty that you have, the liberty that you choose
Mhm.
to and it completely absorb what life is giving you.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, that's all defining it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's very freeing.
But for something like a little bit more tangible, I wanted to kind of bring up a book that really has affected me in life. And I was a philosophy and psychology minor in college, and it had enriched my mind a lot in this aspect. So it's not all me here. This is a lot of training. But there is a book that was kind of the intro to it all, called The World's Religions. And it's by a guy named Houston Smith. He was a philosopher of sorts, but he also was a professor at some prestigious universities in the 40s and 50s. And he's Indian, so he comes from a heavy Hinduism influence. But it's such an incredible thread between all of the five major religions slash philosophies in the world that I think really are so good at helping assist you in spirituality if you need a basis in that. And it's Hinduism, I think it's Confucianism, Taoism, which is basically mysticism, Judaism, and Christianity. And so what it does is, instead of finding the differences that divide us and divide all of the major philosophies in life in a way that can send us all into a frenzy, it connects us. It finds only the similarities in which all of these things became important, and what the purpose was, regardless of your upbringing, regardless of your culture. None of those things are important in this book. And so I think that that sometimes, if someone has fundamental issues with religion, they're going to resist spirituality. And I strongly encourage someone in that space to to pick up this book and read it, no matter how rudimentary it seems. I found it profound.
Okay.
And I find it profound every time I pick it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so neat how he did that there.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit of a healing book if you are having, if the rut to spirituality is religion. I can't encourage this book enough to be part of yourself, because it's just it opens up a totally forgiving and unifying perspective. So
maybe all we need a lot.
Oh yes, we did. We get real nasty. We get real ugly, So I mean, egos are just not a part of any of it.
Yeah. Right.
Like the depth of any of it. So, I think that's just a great segue into saying, I'm going to come into this with a purity of mind.
Love that. Great. It's a great ending takeaway. I think that really gives folks something more to look into, something to think about. And I like that idea too, of like, take the egos out of it. And I think that when we think of spirituality, it should be something that's freeing. It should be something that's very personal, and it should be something that's very ours. And so it really doesn't matter what anyone thinks. It's how can you get curious and figure that out. So
yes, and there's so many ways to get curious. That's what's so cool.
So many.
There's so many, and I don't have an angle from that perspective, because I tend to try to utilize my own resources as much as possible, because I think it's it's more individualized, and it's more pure to you. But yeah, I think just making it important and making it tangible to you is the first step.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much. It was so good to chat and talk.
You're welcome.
I'm definitely gonna put your link her. So if you do live in the Indiana, Kentucky area, you should.
I'd love to see you.
But we appreciate you so much. Thank you for spending your time today, sharing your wisdom and insights. And I hope everyone has a great week. And we'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye bye all. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Of course.